I've been pretty happy with the way he's gone.
I knew my car was good, but I didn't realise that we were that good.
Jamie Larson running around the top line. Allard down low. What a battle royal.
Welcome to the second season of Methanol Madness, brought to us by Edge Parts and Performance. I'm joined in the studio by the voice of Ruapuna Speedway, AJ Batt. Good to see you, AJ. What a long winter that was.
Oh, it was, and isn't it going to be good heading into a bit of normality? Out the door goes COVID, and time to get the elbows up at the Speedway.
Yeah, well, it's just a couple of weeks before opening night. I'm really looking forward to a few events that are happening this year. We'll talk about that shortly. But of course, Methanol Madness, if you don't know, is designed to support Ruapuna Speedway and the drivers that are registered to the track. Through the year, we'll get round to some of the other race series, the Hydrolink War of the Wings and the Civil Construction Southern Sprint Car Series, and any other race series that our drivers compete in. So it'll be an interesting year. We'll get to see a lot of racing, but primarily we'll be focused on Ruapuna. Okay, with the long winter behind us now, of course, it's time to look forwards to the new season. And what's been happening in the off-season? AJ, any sort of news you know of, any new drivers, and what's happening within the ranks of our driving classes?
I think this is very much going to be a transitional season at the Racecourse Hotel and Motorlodge, Ruapuna Speedway. It's going to be a bit of a changing of the guard. You know, some of the old familiar faces are going to be moving on, heading with the dust all around them, aren't they? And it's time for the young guys to start stepping up. And it's really just going to be one of those years where, you know, the likes of Dave Kerr moves out of the midgets. What a loss to the midgets, but what a gain to the sprint cars. Even if he is in a car that is, by his own admission, a bit of an antique. But we've had glimpses of Dave. It's going to be a more regular drive for him. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Dave Kerr. He's one of the most exciting drivers I've ever come across, and certainly last year when he took on Michael Pickens in that antique sprint car you talked about, and he actually did him, and we all watched that, and it was wonderful to watch. A couple of other drivers to talk about, and you've got a big announcement coming shortly as well, but Cameron McKenzie, he's going from TQs to modified sprints. Sam McCrenna into the higher powered midgets from his TQ days. He had a wee bit of an incident out at Ellesmere.
Yeah, it wasn't a particularly good introduction to the midget car for him, but he's a kid that we've talked about a lot. He's just got so much ability, and he's got that raw talent that I'm very sure is going to surface very quickly. Adds to an exciting midget car class for the year.
It sure does. And another driver to watch out for who was an absolute surprise on practice day was Liam Astle. Just 18 years old, Nathan Astle's boy, and he jumped into that modified sprint for the first time. Looked like he'd been driving it for years.
Oh, he hit it for 6, didn't he? He really did. I was so impressed with him. And he just showed the line so that someone who's put in a lot more laps than he has is going to drag out of the bag. And, you know, for the racetrack, you know, it was a good racetrack for a practice as well. So it's going to be pretty close to what they strike on race nights. And, yeah, Liam, a real talent.
Yeah, we'll look into that a little further in the show. But you've got some big news. Tell us about what's happening in the sprint car ranks.
Yeah, well, during the winter, Daniel Anderson, and we remember Daniel from Tiana, he brought Buddy Kofoid out here a couple of seasons ago, and Daniel was up in the States, and he rang me and just said, oh, I've got this kid coming down to race, and he told me the name, Joel Myers Jr., and he said, if you get a chance, watch him. So I was actually up in the States in September, and Joel was at like 3 of the nights racing that I got to, and the Northern California sprint car division is sort of going through a bit of a change itself. It is jam-packed with kids who are 15 or 16 years old, and Joel's just pretty much fresh 16, and a couple of weeks before I got up there he finished 4th twice in World of Outlaw features, and so, you know, you've got to be pretty good to do that. And so then back on the quarter-mile bull rings at Placerville and Chico, he put up a really good show, and Daniel has got a good kid coming here. He's got a lot to learn, but he's fast, and he's really going to add some spark to the mainland sprint car ranks.
How exciting is that? That could be the next Buddy Kofoid. We know how exciting he was when he was here just a few years ago. Another driver, of course, with some off-season news, Jack Lowe.
Jack Lowe, yeah, this has sort of been simmering for a wee while, and even though it surfaced came to the top right at the end of last season. Jack's been picked up to race for the Seamount Racing team in Auckland. Through the years, Brett and Lee Morris have had some of the absolute rock stars of Speedway racing driving for them. You know, Michael Pickens did a stint with them. You know, we've had American drivers, Dave Darlin, Tony Elliott. You know, some of the very, very best racers have driven for Seamount. But they've sort of changed their focus a little into let's find a Kiwi kid who, you know, we think deserves a real good shot at it on talent alone. And I know that Brett has talked a lot about Jack for a number of years, right back to Jack's first season when he ran that old Toyota, and I think the engine came out of a Corona, if the truth be known, because, you know, it wasn't a high-class piece of equipment, and Jack was just a very fresh-faced school kid, and he got into it and he absolutely ran the wheels off that car, albeit near the back of the field. But Brett Morris is so smart about the sport that he's watching this kid, and he said to me, that Jack Lowe's pretty good, and he said he may have been running sort of near the back of the field, but he's got the right lines, and he's got, you know, shows the talent that is worth tapping into. And so I really wasn't surprised, because they're probably the only car owners that would ever think about a South Islander. And one of the good things is that Jack will be racing down here a bit. He'll be running the Seamount car down here, but when it's not down here, like they're certainly going to roll that one out for the big gigs, he'll be running his car from last season, and so he's not going to be lost to Christchurch Speedway, which is very, very good.
And what an absolute coup it is for Jack Lowe and the City South Fan Spares team. Brett Morris really giving these guys, who are basically budget competitors, an absolute chance to take on the heavyweights up in Auckland, so we look forwards to that. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did actually catch up with Jack Lowe in the studio. Here's what he had to say about the situation.
So yeah, myself and the team have been offered a pretty big opportunity. We'll be running the 4A car for Brett and Lee Morris Seamount Racing season. We'll try to prioritise Western Springs, but we will be running down here every second week.
Well, that's a massive opportunity. I don't know if there's any Ruapuna drivers that have been contracted to Western Springs. How did this opportunity come about?
They kind of just approached us at the final meeting, the fireworks meeting at Bay Park, and yeah, just gave us an offer we couldn't refuse.
Well, that's wonderful to hear, and certainly we've watched your progress pretty closely over the last 2 or 3 years, and your driving style is pretty impressive at the moment, but it must be great to have these guys recognise you.
Yeah, it's pretty humbling, really, yeah.
Tell me about the season. So how many events are you running? I would imagine it's a fairly full calendar.
Yeah, the race calendar's looking pretty chocker. It's about 6 or 7 months of pretty much every weekend racing, as long as the funds are alright and we don't do too much damage, everything goes well.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, of course, the Seamount team have been very supportive of plenty of drivers, including Michael Pickens. They've brought a few Americans out over the last decade or so, and they must see some talent in you. You're probably not going to say anything about that, but I'm sure they've seen the talent, and you guys actually travelled up to the North Island for a couple of seasons. Tell us about your experiences driving the City South Van Spares midget up there.
I mean, at first it can be a wee bit intimidating, you know, especially when you're the only South Island car there. But, you know, once you get comfortable there, you're used to it, it's pretty welcoming, really. It's not bad.
The time that I went and watched you up there, you had terrible luck. I think you trashed a couple of chassis, and it was around Christmas time. There's all sorts of problems going on. Can you tell us how intense the racing is up there?
Yeah, it is very hard, very close racing. You notice that right from when the checker drops, everyone's right there on the start. Yeah, it's just full on up there.
Well, look, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for you. How will you measure a successful season for you guys? I mean, what are your own personal goals with driving this year?
Not a lot, really. I don't really have too much expectations. I kind of just go out there and whatever happens, happens, you know.
Well, that's probably not a bad way to look at it, actually, because it's very difficult to know how things will go for you guys. I think most of us would be hoping that you can compete on the big stage. You did actually do that in the BT for Mates. We all remember you taking on Brad Mosen and Michael Pickens and passing both of them. We know that Michael actually got you on the second to last corner, I think it was. But what was the BT for Mates intensity like? Was it similar to Western Springs?
Yeah, the racing was very close, quite full on, you know. Just elbows out racing the whole weekend.
What will the difference be between the City South Van Spears midget and this car that's being prepared for you right now?
There is a few differences chassis wise, so we'll pretty much just be figuring out setups and different wee bits to the car for probably the whole season really. It's pretty much just going to be a learner season.
And what's the crew arrangements? Who looks after the car? You've got Dad, Dave and Jeff working for you at the moment. Who looks after the car when you're in the North Island?
So we'll be keeping the same crew coming up. We've picked up another couple people to help up there, Sam and Jack.
Yep.
So not only am I getting comfortable in the car, but we're getting comfortable with new people helping out, and you know they're getting comfortable with our setup.
Well, Jack, it's a massive opportunity. Did you ever think this would happen?
No, personally, definitely not. Especially not for a South Island driver. I'd just like to say a huge, massive thank you to Brett and Lee Morris for the opportunity. It's massive for the team.
Well, that's really exciting for the City South Van Spears driver of Jack Lowe, and they're certainly budget drivers, and this is a massive opportunity for them, and we hope it goes well for them. Time to look at this season, AJ. It's certainly shaping up as an exciting season at Ruapuna Speedway. What's your thoughts and what are you looking forward to?
I think the first thing that stands out for me is Ruapuna is starting to find some real consistency with its program. You know, we've dabbled and tried a few little things, but now, you know, we're sticking with our knitting. The carnival night is just such a good success, and that's become a cornerstone of our season. We've got the Dalton Sprint Car Summer Slam. You know, it serves its purpose. It gives the local drivers and anyone who wants to come to town a bit of a run for some money and so on. I think the big ticket item for this year is the New Zealand Sprint Car Championship, and you know, Access Man, thanks to them, they've got in and backed that for us. But I think what everyone needs to start considering is that after this year, a number of other tracks are going to be joining the rotation for the New Zealand Sprint Car Championship, and so there's every possibility it's going to be anything from 8 to 10 years before it's back here down at Christchurch, and I'll be an old man by then, so this is going to be a ripper.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to the Access Man New Zealand Sprint Car title. Of course, it's over 2 days on the 4th and 5th of February. It's a Saturday and a Sunday. Traditionally, we've run it on a Friday, Saturday, but it's slightly different.
Yeah. Monday's a holiday.
Monday's a holiday, yeah. What a great weekend to come and watch Speedway at Ruapuna. Of course, the other highlights for me, of course, the Seamount BT for Mates is one that I really enjoyed last year. Of course, that's where we've seen Jack Lowe emerge as a great talent. And, of course, Liam McCoubrey and Glenn Jury. Man, how good are those drivers at the moment? Not to mention Jeremy Webb and a couple of others.
It's going to be a really big weekend for the midgets. We've got the BT Race for Mates on the Friday night, the Seamount New Zealand Midget Car Grand Prix on the Saturday night. The big guns are going to come into town for that, and I know that they were taken back a little last year by how good some of our guys are. And traditionally, you know, we might have had one or two of our drivers sort of get into that top 6, top 8 sort of area in the results when they're up against the North Islanders, but this time our guys were in there, they were up to their neck in it. And so, you know, we had a good half dozen of our drivers who were just right in there, and they were giving it to the North Islanders. Yeah. And I think it took the Northerners a little bit by surprise. We've known all along that we've had pretty good drivers, but because we lack those great big midget car shows, we haven't had the yardstick to measure their ability by. We've got it now, and so here's another chance this year just to underline that. And let's remember, Jeremy didn't have that good a run at last year's event, so here's a really good opportunity for him.
Of course, and Jeremy's somebody we haven't spoken about, one of the very few drivers from America to take on the Chili Bowl, and he performed pretty well for that Tony Elliott Foundation team when he was over there just a few years ago. For me, it's going to be the Concut Carnival Fireworks Night. That's the one if you want to bring your family along and just to enjoy a really good atmosphere. And there's a new novelty race happening at Ruapuna Speedway this year. It's called Last Man Standing. Now, the format is basically a dash for cash. What that means is we'll have 8 to 10 either midgets or sprint cars racing for $1,000 cash, and the format's pretty interesting. They'll get 4 laps, and if you're last after 4 laps, you'll get put to the infield. You'll eventually end up with 4 runners, and those 4 runners will compete over 4 laps for the cash. So a pretty interesting novelty race there, AJ, and good to get away from the restrictions of the Speedway NZ formatting.
Yeah.
And I think the crowd will really enjoy this.
I think they will, and you know, the word around town is the midget guys are just busting to have a crack at this, and I think the midget car class is probably the perfect platform to launch the last man standing off. You know, let's just think about some of the racing we had last year. You would think they were running for a sheep station out there, and you've got old Glenn Jury. Once he starts pulling out the boxer tricks with those super slide jobs, you know, that's really cool. The likes of Liam McCoubrey, you know, showed so much talent for his first season. Let's just see that he doesn't get the second season jitters. So big opportunity for the midget class. I think it's really important that the support classes have got some good events too. You know, the TQs, they've got the TQ Southern Derby, or the 20 lap race. Of course, the Ryan Stone 17 lap memorial race. You know, that's always a big one, and there's a lot of sentiment and a lot of feeling about that one. The modified sprints are running a series around the South Island this year, and of course the Ruapuna Rumble last year for the six-shooters, I thought it was just outstanding. You know, we had a big field of them and they got right in there, and I do think personally that here's a really good opportunity now for us to start tapping into the six-shooter class, because what's happened down the island at Cromwell and Invercargill, it's starting off, there's young kids getting in there and they're using it as a platform to move into the sprint car division, whereas up here we predominantly got older guys who have decided, we just want to keep racing and go out there. And so the wingless V6 six-shooters, call them what you like, a brilliant class for someone who actually wants to progress up into the sprint cars. Yep. And they start with a leg up.
Absolutely, and the key to those V6 wingless sprints is numbers on the track. Yep. And the close racing. They're a fairly even sort of a motor, which is a great class to actually get started in, particularly if you've got ambitions of going a little further. So certainly lots of race series to watch at Ruapuna, and of course a few that are going around the traps in the South Island. Okay, time to move on to Crash of the Week, and new sponsor to the show is ProBend. This is a business that John Seabright, a sprint car driver we all know, who's competed at Ruapuna Speedway, is running from down south. And time to have a look at Caleb Bourne's incident in the weekend. So AJ, Caleb Bourne was doing some pretty good laps here on practice day at Ruapuna, and just had a wee incident on the second to last lap of his last practice session.
Yeah, it certainly looks as though there was some sort of mechanical deal with the front end there. It was one of those undies changing sort of episodes, because you know the last thing you want with the first outing of the car is to, you know, tip the thing over or at least strike a major issue. Yeah,
it turns out that front left wheel actually released itself. It was a faulty wheel nut, and it stripped itself. And luckily that wheel, if you look closely, actually lodged itself under the wing. We've occasionally seen those wheels go in all sorts of directions. It was a fairly gentle spin. He backed the sprint car into the wall, and most of the momentum was taken out of the car, and he ended up on the side there. So not too much damage for Caleb. Probably a little frightening going through that, but by and large there was no major incidents there.
No, the Sasquatch, he wouldn't have been happy though, would he? He'll come back all guns blazing.
Indeed, Caleb Bourne, one of the big characters at Ruapuna Speedway. Well, time now to look at Saturday's review of practice. And AJ, the first class out was the quarter midgets. And what were your thoughts on the quarter midgets?
Big numbers. Yeah, really big numbers, and you know, Jack Brownlee's, we know how good this kid is. He's going to be racing over in Australia as well this season, so you know, Jack is he's a rare talent, this kid. But you know, some of the other kids that are starting to come through the ranks, you know, the likes of the Everett boys, you know, they start showing that pace, the second year pace. I think the quarter midgets this year is going to be a little more open for sort of like those, you know, Jack may be lacking a challenger for a while, now that Ethan Smith's moved on into the TQs and that. But, you know, some kids out there doing a really good job, and good to see the likes of Miller Johnson and Jack Reed out there. You know, young Miller, you know, they just wanted to get into it. So good on them. A perfect way for a family to start racing Speedway, and it is a family deal.
Absolutely, of course, that's Joe Johnson and Fiona Johnson with Miller, who's an absolute sprint car nut, and good to see him just putting around, which they all do in their first year, isn't it? And as you said before, Jack Reed, the 95C, he's got a nice looking car actually. Not sure where Jack's come from, but we might talk to him at the next practice if he's there. Second class up was the modified sprints, and Craig Cox, how quick was he going?
Oh, Coxie picked up where he left off last year most of the time, didn't he? And he's just one of those guys. The modified sprints, they are a momentum class, and so to succeed, your foot's got to be hard into the bucket the whole way, and Craig Cox certainly knows how to do that.
Yeah, another surprise, 47C, Harry McIntyre. He was Rookie of the Year last year, but man, he was doing 14.5 second laps around Ruapuna. He's really stepped up.
Yeah, he has, and you know, he's had plenty of exposure to the sport. He was one of Caleb Bourne's crew for a while, and you know, they just get into it. And again, you know, every lap that you get under your belt with speedway racing is a good lap, because you learn so much. Just all the time, these younger drivers, they start learning, they realise the momentum, they realise the parts of the track that they've just got to run on to keep that pace up. And so he's going to be one to watch for this year.
Yeah, it's a real technical class, the modified sprints. Most people think you just got to put your foot down, but you've really got to find the dirt and the grip there. And the last driver that was a real surprise to me, Liam Astle, just 18 years old, Nathan Astle's son, and he was under the 15-second lap time as well. It was wonderful to watch that.
Yeah, he just hit them for 6, didn't he? He really did. I was so impressed. Where I was at the track, I didn't have, well, obviously we didn't have programs, and I'm going, God, who's this? and you sit there and watch, and I was trying to work out, well, who is it from last year? He looked like a seasoned campaigner out there. Really good, very impressed.
Yeah, well, of course, he's in the Avon Insurance modified sprint, and a big moment for Nathan, his dad, because he's just got out of car racing now, only to support his son, and we caught up with him just to get a quick comment after Liam's success.
I've been pretty happy with the way he's gone. Only been in the car, like you said, for two cracks, and kept nice lines, been pretty smooth, and done some good lap times, so it's all good so far.
AJ, an excited Nathan Astle, good to see him passing on all his skill to his boy.
Yeah, and Nathan was a very good modified sprint driver before he moved up into the V8s, and it didn't take him very long to adapt. And you know, that hand-eye coordination, it was certainly one of the things that made Nathan Astle just that little bit special, and I'm sure it helped him adapt to become a race car driver very, very quickly.
Absolutely. Next class was the V6 wingless sprints. Kane Jemmett looked pretty handy on the day.
He did, and another second-year driver, and so you know, I guess a big part of it is that over the winter, you know, they start putting into practice what they've learned in their previous season, when they start stripping their race cars down and understand a little more the technical aspect of it and how the bits go together on it and how these bits and pieces work and so on. It gives you a far greater understanding. The number of people that can get into a speedway car and just drive and not know what the hell the vehicle under them is doing. Not many of them succeed. No. You've got to be the complete package, and yeah, I was really impressed with Kane, and I think Mum Charlene's going to chase him along a bit this year. All in the family, isn't it?
They were indeed. Just talking about who can drive a car with no setup, Sam Johnson from last year, he wasn't at practice, but I'm looking forward to him coming back. Him and his dad have really taken a big step up, and with a bit of luck with some setup, which we've always talked about with Sam, he can get that car going well. Simon Moore was pretty impressive. He's bought a brand new car this year. Man, it looked good too. He had a custom bonnet on it, and it looked really racy. Whether it is or not, we won't know, but good to see Simon Moore competing on first practice. TQs were impressive again. A good number turned up on the day there. AJ, anybody impress you?
Ben Morgan. Yeah, Ben, he's another one of these young guys that's starting to come through the ranks and starting to notch up some key results as well. And, you know, we're always going to, well, not always, but for this season, we're going to have Jeremy Webb and we're going to have Kyle Glover. But the number of those older guys is starting to thin out a little. And so we get these young kids that are starting to come in there and they're really exerting some pressure.
Yeah, I agree. Well, another driver for me that was impressive was the Rookie of the Year last year, Aaron Finlay, the 38C yellow car. Easy to find him, and he looked like he was lapping pretty well as well.
Yeah, he was, and you know, he's going to be one that we're going to really have to watch out for this year.
Ethan Smith was pretty comfortable going from quarters to TQs, no issues there. I think just with a few more laps under his belt, he'll be going pretty well as well.
Yeah, third generation racer, so you know it's in the DNA, isn't it? And Ethan put up some really good showings in the quarter midgets last season, and this is a big opportunity for him.
Absolutely. Time to look at the midgets, and just 4 midgets took the track on Saturday. Sam McCrenna was testing his new car. He looked just quietly going around, finding his confidence with that Gertie engine that's probably got about 320 horsepower in it, compared to his old TQ, which probably had about 95 or 100 horse in it. Liam McCurby looked fast and smooth as usual, and Mitchell Hill was running his car and just quietly getting it sorted. Mitchell had some issues with the engine a few weeks ago, and I think he's got to the bottom of that. Jack Lowe was there as well.
Jack Lowe, another that just, it was as though there had not been a winter. He immediately got in there, got on the pace, and he was impressive to watch. I think of the 4 that were there, I'm really looking forward to Mitchell Hill having a good, solid run, because the guy has shown plenty of talent and plenty of pace. It's just a matter of everything hanging together and sticking together at the right time. And Mitchell Hill, he's going to really shine.
Yeah, I agree. He probably had his best year last year with some of those performances. But Jack Lowe really impressed me. He was super aggressive, and perhaps he's just feeling the anxiety about going to Auckland. He knows he's got to drive hard, and he really got into it, and it was really impressive to watch. Sprint cars, just 2 competitors. It was Caleb Bourne, of course, running the 95C, which is Ray, his dad's number, and Matthew Leversedge. What were your thoughts on those 2 guys?
You always know what you're going to get with both of them. The Sasquatch, Caleb Bourne, he is all fire and brimstone, as you said earlier, one of the real personalities of the game, and it's going to be interesting to see the transition of his father Ray from sort of behind the wheel to now behind the spanners. That's going to be very interesting, because often teams have to gel, and not all father and son deals work particularly well. Matthew Leversedge, super smooth. He's heading up to race up in Auckland for pretty much the early part of the season, and he will be one that when it comes to nationals, he knows Ruapuna intimately, and he gets that pace build up that he's going to get up at Auckland. He's got some really good backers up there, and so Matthew's going to be something. He's worth a fiver for the New Zealand Championship. He's one of the sleepers on this one.
Years ago, he used to drive the best pole line sprint car style that I can ever remember, and I remember him putting a few moves on our crowd favourite Jamie Duff one time. He turned into the villain because they had it coming together, but he really had some pace in that car, and he would be certainly one to watch as, let's say, an underdog from Ruapuna when it comes to the title coming up in February. One thing that impressed me about Matthew and Caleb was they used the practice correctly. They were trying different techniques, they were looking for dirt, they were changing their setups and really trying to work out the best settings for the cars. More often than not, the new drivers will just go and do laps and not test things out too much, but certainly they are 2 drivers to watch. Of course, that's the 95C of Caleb Bourne and 78C of Matthew Leversedge. Okay folks, it's giveaway time, and Ruapuna Speedway this year has given out 100 family passes for opening night, which is happening on the 29th of October. Now, believe it or not, 90 of these passes have been given out to various organisations and schools around the Rolleston area. We have focused on that area this year. But Methanol Madness has got 10 family passes to give away, and if you go to our Facebook page, this is what you might want to look for, the posting with these pictures here. And if you put your name on the comment section there, we're going to give away 10 family passes for opening night, and of course we'll draw that next week on the show, and with a bit of luck, if you win one of those, it's worth about $60. And opening night is a great night to be down on the track. There's always great atmosphere, the racing's pretty fierce, and there's the odd crash or two as well. Okay folks, time to look at the season calendars for some of the classes. The first class we're going to look at is the sprint cars, and they've got the Hydrolink War of the Wings. AJ, what's happening with those guys?
It's always a big one on the mainland calendar, isn't it? The Hydrolink War of the Wings. Ruapuna gets a couple of bites of the cherry. December the 17th and then April the 1st. That's no joke, that one. Round 2, we're going to Greymouth, the what do they call it? The Wild West Shootout at Greenstone Park. That's a real fan favourite. Also, the drivers love that one. Back to Dunedin, the 25th of February. It's going to be great to heading off to Beachlands. Top of the South at Nelson on March the 4th. Big long drive down to Riverside Speedway in Invercargill on March the 25th. And then, of course, Ruapuna April the 1st. April the 7th, Good Friday, the grand finale at Central Motor Speedway in Cromwell.
Yeah, good stuff. Of course, the next sprint car series that we're going to look at is the Civil Construction Southern Sprint Car Series. What's happening in their series there, AJ?
Okay, the Southern Series, it cranks up this weekend down at Dunedin, 15th of October at Beachlands, 22nd of October Central Motor Speedway at Cromwell, and then 10th of December Beachlands in Dunedin, and the final there on New Year's Day, 1st of January at Central Motor Speedway in Cromwell. So a nice compact sort of calendar, and it is a very, very big season for sprint cars in the South Island this year. So this is going to work well for everyone.
Absolutely, and it's a well-promoted series, and I think Steve Duff Jr. Competed in that last year, and he will probably compete in that again this year. And the next race series we'll look at is the Quarter Midgets. It looks like the class has been very proactive. They've got a 5 rounds of the Mike Greer Holmes Quarter Midget Series. And what's happening there, AJ? Ellesmere the 23rd of October, Nelson the 9th of December, Ruapuna 21st of January, over to the coast 28th of January, Nelson the 4th of March. And what I really like about this is that these young kids are going to get a lot of exposure at different racetracks, and every one of these tracks has its own little subtlety, and so there's a mixture of nighttime racing, daytime racing at Ellesmere and Greenstone Park, and so, you know, racing at night and racing at day can be totally different things, especially when tracks get a little bit harder, drier and slicker. Good for the kids. Absolutely, and Louise Smith, a contributor to this show, who we'll see in the next few weeks, is organising the Quarter Midgets, so well done to her, and good to see those guys travelling around. The next series we'll look at is the V6 Wingless Sprints, and they have a tri-series happening at Ruapuna over 3 dates. We'll throw our graphic up for that in a second. But good to see Andrew Gregg organising another series. It's the Letton Curvin Channel Tri-Series, and of course that will complement their Rumble, AJ. Fleet of cars, couldn't he? But again, really good, because this is going to give the drivers opportunities to compete against out-of-towners and so on, and every bit of exposure is good exposure. Of course, and the last one we'll look at, of course, is the modified sprints. Courtney Jones, the rep there, they're organising a King of the South series. Don't have too many details on that at the moment, but look out for that on the webpage if you like the modified sprints. They're travelling around the South Island, and I believe they might be following the Hydrolink War of the Wings, so might be working in parallel with them. Well, the major sponsor of Methanol Madness is Edge Parts and Performance. They've got a store here in Christchurch in Distribution Lane. Recently, we took a look through. If you haven't been down to Edge Parts and Performance lately, you won't know about their massive range of performance parts and consumables. They carry stock and parts for Speedway, hot rods, drag cars, jet boats, road cars and marine. Catch up with Andrew, Brett or Jenny, and they can solve most issues when it comes to performance parts. They're located on Distribution Lane, just under the Sockburn Overbridge, and they're great supporters of Ruapuna Speedway. Well, it's great to have Edge Parts and Performance on the show. AJ, it's a big store down at Distribution Lane. Oh boy, it's got everything that's going to make you go faster and make your car look good. Absolutely. Well, look, time to move on to Race of the Week, and what we're going to do is rewind time a wee bit, and we're going to go back to the 2017 Sprint Car title. That was at Ruapuna. AJ, what do you remember about that? I remember Jamie Larson winning it, and what we had was a couple of 3 guys that were hell-bent on running that top side of the racetrack, and you know, they really got them out, didn't they? They were running right up, hard up against the concrete wall. Jonathan Allard tried so hard, and then Jamie McDonald came on with a big charge, and so it was sort of as though everything started working in Larson's favour as the race went on. You know, the setup came in right on time. Well, it was a great race to watch. Let's take a look at the 2017 New Zealand Sprint Car title.
Let's send them away! And it is Jamie Duff makes a good start from the pole line. Allard in second. Certainly dust is going to be a factor in this one. So Duff up high, Allard down low. We've got 1 lap in the books as they cross the line. So Duff leads way. Matthew Levisich moves into second position. Allard running in third. Fourth is Jamie Larson. In fifth is Jamie McDonald. Here comes Rodney Wood. Wood up into that fifth position right now. So still leading the way. It's the local boy, Jamie Duff. Matthew Levisich right up and bottom. Levisich climbed into Duff. They've both come unstuck. Going into the town bend. It was a gap that may not have been there. Levisage has managed to continue. Duff, his car stranded in the middle of the CJ Phillips Construction Town Bend under the green. It's Levisage down low, Duff up high, and now we've got the three wide sandwiches. They go down the straight. Levisage has emerged from that one in the lead. Allard muscles his way into second, and Allard, he gets into Levisage. Allard's around, and Duff got caught up in that. Oh boy, is it a night for people getting caught up in other people's messes. McDonald, we go green. The battle that is well worth watching is that one for third, fourth and fifth. Again, Taylor finds the drive coming out of the town bend. He is in third. He's starting to threaten Jonathan Allard. Stephen Taylor in the 21 car, winding up the wick. Our race leader is Jamie McDonald. Jonathan Allard in second. All eyes on Taylor. The car is on rails up the top part of the racetrack. He is the man on the march. He may be in third, but he is starting to threaten these guys. Here comes Larson. He's looking at the top line now, and he knows how to make it work around here. Larson down low, Taylor up high. Larson's in the third. Can he complete the slider? No, he can't. Taylor, wheel to wheel, toe to toe, down the back straight, into the prison bend. It's Larson high, Taylor low, and Larson is going to have the momentum to move into third. Jamie McDonald at the head of the pack. Jonathan Allard in second. Jamie Larson in third. Don't ride off Stephen Taylor's attempts just yet. We're down to 5 laps. Next time they go past the start-finish line. Taylor and Larson both utilising the high line. Jamie McDonald down low, reserving the tyres. He just runs such a good, tidy, slick track line. Yellow again. We've got one around down in the town bend. Back on the green we go. 6 laps to go. The battle resumes. McDonald at the head of the pack. Here comes Allard. Allard right in behind him. Now Jonathan Allard tries the high line. McDonald just gets a little bit of a push on as they go through the prison bend. He manages to maintain a spot, but inches between McDonald and Allard as they came down the front straight. Is McDonald's car starting to go off limb? It certainly appears to be slowing up. And here comes Larson. A big charge from Larson. McDonald, he is certainly going backwards. Larson's at the front. Jamie Larson running around the top line. Allard down low. What a battle royal. Less than a handful of laps to go. McDonald trying to preserve that car. So Larson's got the momentum line. He has got the fast times. Triple X on rails up top. Allard just gets his nose in front, but the momentum is still with Larson. The crowd are on their feet here at Racecourse, Motorlodge, Ruapuna Speedway. He is running where Angels fear to tread, right up by the wall. Allard now about 4 cars in the rear. Folks, the white flags coming out. The kitchen sink's going out the window shortly. Taylor retires to the infield. It's Larson. White flag, 1 lap to go. Allard, he's got limited chances now. It's Jamie Larson. Allard, one last chance. The drag race down the back straight. Jamie Larson, about 4 car lengths, and it's going to be his. Larson's going to take out the Nationals through the prison bend. Checkered flag. Jamie Larson, you ripper. What a win. Jonathan Allard second. Third place goes to Jamie McDonald. Fourth, Daniel Lee. Wow.
Well, I tell you what, that looked like an American track, dry slick right out to the wall, and AJ Joel Myers Jr., he might be a real favourite if he gets a track like that.
Yeah, he's going to love them. You know, there's a lot of the Northern California tracks that are rather similar to Ruapuna. Certainly they've got more banking over here, but Ruapuna's a nice wide track, and when it offers multiple lines for the guys to use, you can run down low if you want to, but if you want to run fast, you'll be way up by the wall. So I'm picking that Joel's really going to enjoy it. He's not used to the really, really slick stuff, but he's already looked at it and he says, I like the look of this.
Okay, with the New Zealand Sprint Car title returning to Ruapuna Speedway this year, we thought we might reach out to some previous winners of the championship. And in 2019, we were witness to a 17-year-old from California coming over to New Zealand and showing us all how to drive a sprint car. Of course, that was Buddy Kofoid, and welcome to the show, Buddy. Good to see you over the other side of the world.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I haven't talked about I think the last time I was in New Zealand for a while, so it'd be nice to catch up a little bit and relive some of that.
Well, look, you're an absolute sensation when you come over here, and we might talk about your career after this, but certainly, what were your memories of the Cromwell Championship? You seemed to dominate the racing, if I remember rightly, and you really put on a performance for everybody that was watching you.
Yes, it's fun to remember, a whole lot about that race. I just remember, I think everyone was able to get a good jump and was kind of just able to control the race by being the leader. And I felt like my car got better as actually the race went on. And I remember an interview, or not an interview, like a video where they're saying that I did 3 laps under the track record in the middle of the feature. So
That's right.
I knew, I knew my car was good, but I didn't realize that we were that good. But yeah, and then to be, I think, the 3rd American to win it was really cool, and it was a big deal to Daniel Anderson and Doug Roots and Jim Richmond and Brad Moy and everyone that had their hand in the car, making it fast and making the opportunity possible for me and Doug to come down from America to compete was a lot of fun, and hopefully able to come back down and do that soon, or at least visit and see some of the people that I feel like I've gotten really close with.
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible performance. Of course, we never knew Buddy Kofoid back in the day. We'd heard this rumour about some young kid at 13 driving sprint cars in America. And if I go back in time a little further, I think you owned a sprint car when you were just 10 years old. Is that the story?
Yeah, so my dad and I decided so we built a spec sprint when I was 9, which is like a limited sprint car. And I practiced as 9 years old. And then we actually got rid of that and we built a Wing 360 sprint car, and I practiced that when I was 10. And then when I was 11, I ended up driving for Dan Simpson. And then when I was 12, I had to go back to go-karts because I was too young to find anywhere to race sprint cars. But then, yeah, since 13 on, I've been running sprint cars pretty much full-time. Yeah, so my dad and I, we did have our own car when I was about 10. And then we did race it when I was 13 a little bit. But now, actually, what's funny is one of the guys that used to help me out a lot when I drove for Dan Simpson, he actually has a big car collection, and he bought that car, and he still owns that car. And it's sitting in his car collection right now, our first sprint car.
Well, how good's that? It's probably a little more valuable these days, given that you've got a big racing history behind you. You probably haven't known anything apart from sprint car racing, I would imagine, but we recently seen you transition into a midget. So you won the New Zealand title here in 2019. Tell me how it all played out for you when you went back to America.
I moved out to the Midwest in 2019. I was living in Ohio at the time, and I raced full-time for Ed Neumeister with the Linders, and I ran 410s full-time around the Midwest. And because that was something that I always wanted to do, was to get out of California and move to the Midwest, which is where, at least, if you want to make it as a race car driver, one of the first steps is to kind of get out of California and get to the Midwest somewhere. And so I was able to do that, and then that's kind of where Keith Coons and Pete Willoughby, who own Keith Coons Motorsports, the midget team I run for right now, they were able to kind of keep a closer eye on me since I was a lot closer to Indiana than, being in Ohio than I was in California. And they decided to try me out a couple times that year, and I won my first midget race for them. And then I had some good runs throughout the year, and then they hired me full-time beginning of January in 2020. And, now that I've been heavily involved with Toyota, and I'm a development driver for them, and so a lot of that's, with the help of Toyota and Mobile One, with my midget stuff, and then some of the truck and ARCA stuff I've done, and late model stuff now. So, but yeah, that, being in the Midwest exposed me to that, and then that got me the opportunity that I have right now, and the stuff that, the other stuff I have outside of my midget racing.
Well, it's pretty impressive stuff, buddy. Of course, you took out the USAC Midget Car Championship in, I think it might have been your second year. It was pretty impressive stuff. We'll get to the BC39 shortly, but how did you find the transition from sprint cars to midgets? Did it feel natural to you? Did you have to adjust things differently? How did it play out for you?
I mean, it was kind of tough. I mean, USAC is really tough. Not saying that, you know, any other series in midgets isn't, but you know, when I started running for KKM, we started in the smaller stuff, the more lower key series to get my feet wet and help the transition be a little bit more natural. But you know, running for a team like them, I feel like accelerated my learning curve, which I think has played a big part in our success now. You know, I felt like we did it the right way, and you know, I think running sprint cars for as long as I have, which I guess hasn't been that long compared to some other people, but I felt like wing sprint cars and midgets, to me, actually related the most out of anything else that I've done so far. So I felt like going from one to the other or vice versa has actually helped quite a bit. And you know, especially in anything under a wing sprint car, it feels more slowed down, and I feel like it's not easy, but you can pick it up a little bit quicker. At least I felt like that's kind of what helped me the most.
Well, it's impressive stuff again. We did watch that BC39, and you were banging walls with Cannon McIntosh, I think it was, and honestly, there was times there we all thought you were going to tip it up. Tell us about that experience, and how hard was that one to win?
There's probably a couple times where I thought I was going to too, but no, it was a really good race. You know, I thought, as a fan standpoint, I thought we put on a really good show for them nonetheless, and I felt like that was one of the most enjoyable and probably one of the best midget races that I've been a part of. But to win it, you know, in Brian's honor, and the race, you know, that brings, you know, 80 to 100 cars, and you know, we're in Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is one of the most historic, you know, racing venues in the world. So to do all that there is really meaningful, and but yeah, the race itself was really good, I thought, and you know, and just the way the cushion built up on the wall, I felt like not a lot of people wanted to do what I was doing, so I felt like that helped me kind of stand out with how I was running up the wall and running back down the wall and making speed. It probably looked wicked, and it was, but ironically at the same time, I thought it was, for me, it was actually really comfortable, and at the end of the day, that's what it took to win. So if it wasn't comfortable, I had to make it feel comfortable and figure it out, and luckily we were able to.
Well, for the close observers of midget car racing, you did look like you were in a flow, and you did look like you knew where you were going, but man, it was spectacular to watch. And for anybody tuning in, what a treat that was for you two guys going at it as quick as you did. Of course, you then went on to Knoxville and actually competed in the Nationals. Tell us about that experience. I think you ended up 12th, was that right?
We were 11th on Saturday, so it's, I guess, you know, first off, that was my first Nationals, and I think at that point I had only ran Knoxville 2 or 3 times, probably a month or two prior before I actually ran the Nationals, and that's, you know, to me, and if you ask anyone else in dirt racing, that's about as tough as it gets as far as just making the race. But you know, I was supposed to run last year for CJB, and I broke my wrist, so I wasn't able to go to Knoxville. And you know, it's funny, I felt like the last couple years leading up to this year, it never worked out where I could go. And then it finally, you know, with Crouch Motorsports, we were able to spend some time there before, and then it worked out where, you know, I didn't get hurt or something didn't happen where I couldn't go. So, but yeah, it was a really good experience, and just making the show alone was huge. But, you know, ran well, and you know, out of 110 of the best sprint car drivers in the world, and you know, 110 guys I think showed up, and I thought we got better and better, and you know, to be rookie of the race is also a good little feather in your cap.
Yeah, it was good to watch, and of course Donny Schatz took it out, and it was pretty emotional when he won it, because I think he's won it a number of times clearly, but it is pretty tough to win at Knoxville, and one day, who knows, Buddy Kofoid might take out a nationals there. It begs the question, what's your preference now? You've done a few seasons in midget car racing and sprint cars. What would your preference be if it was just purely based on driving?
So it's funny, like I felt like I got asked this a lot last year, or maybe my first year in the midgets, and I was like, I don't really know. I don't know. I enjoy the midgets and I enjoy the sprint cars, but they're fun and they put on great racing in their own way. So it's hard to compare them. But now that I feel like sprint cars has always been kind of home to me. And now that I can finally, spend more time in a sprint car again this year, and I felt like, we've had, probably one of my better years in a sprint car this year. I think I'd probably have to choose sprint cars right now. It's just, things are going good, and Crouch Motorsports and I, it's a really good team, and we're all getting along, and, we're fast most places we go, and we're consistent. I just feel comfortable, and so right now I probably have to go with the sprint car.
Well, that's interesting to know, and I certainly thought you were a natural sprint car driver, but the transition to midgets was wonderful to watch. There seems to be a pattern around the world for all ex-midget car drivers to go sprint car racing now. We've got our own guys, Michael Pickens, Zeb Wise, Tyler Courtney, he's doing it as well, and it seems to be a discipline that most people take on now.
Yeah, I think, I guess compared to some of those guys, I started in sprint cars before I ever started in midgets. And so I felt like I kind of had a few years under my belt before I moved to a midget, and at the same time I still continued my sprint car racing as much as my schedule allowed me to. But, I feel like, sprint car drivers, when they go to a midget, I feel like they excel. But then, like I said, you see those guys going from midgets to sprint cars or vice versa, and they run well, and if you can kind of go back and forth and have success. So I think that kind of shows some of the similarities between the cars, and like I said, if you do good and then you jump in another, I feel like it can make you really good in that one, and then it just keeps you versatile, or I guess you're able to adapt quickly, and I feel like in racing that's really important. Also, wing sprint cars pay good money in the U.S. too.
Oh, well, that's important. It's hard to believe you're just 20 years old, buddy, and it's certainly been impressive. I remember some of our commentators saying to our crowd, watch out for this guy, he's an absolute sensation, and you've actually realised all that potential, man. It must be a hell of a ride for you. What are the future plans for Buddy Kofoid? You must be being courted by many other car disciplines. Anything on the...
As of right now, with Toyota, they're still finalizing, I think some plans as far as what I'm going to do next year. But, my main focus right now with them is to finish the midget season strong and hopefully get into a championship. And they also have been getting me some pavement late model races. So hopefully those can continue to go good. And that's, at least for me, I would like to be moved on to pavement next year and focus on that. And because my goal has always been NASCAR, so that's just a small step to getting there. That in Toyota's got numerous possibilities and opportunities and connections to get there. So as a dirt guy, I think they have a really great midget program, and then they kind of try and get you to excel in that, and if you can, then they'll move you on to pavement. So hopefully, like I said, I'm not sure quite yet, but hopefully pavement aspirations come true soon.
Well, I can't imagine it would be too hard for you to make the discipline change. Buddy Kofoid, thanks for joining the show today on Methanol Madness. We really appreciate having you on here. We'd love to see you out at New Zealand tracks one time in the future. Difficult to know. Your career is certainly stellar in the making and going somewhere right now. But again, thanks for joining the show, and we wish you good luck.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully get to see you guys down there soon and at a racetrack or just wherever. So, yeah, thank you.
There you go, folks. Buddy Kofoid joins the show, an absolute sensation in the sprint car and midget car world, probably one of the best drivers we've ever seen down here in New Zealand, and it's going to be great to watch his career as he takes it further into his own future. Well, what a treat to have Buddy Kofoid on the show. Time to look forwards to our next event at Ruapuna Speedway, and of course it's second practice happening on the 15th of October. If you're a Speedway fan, get yourself down there. It's free admission, of course, and we expect a few more drivers to be participating as we get closer to opening night. Opening night is happening on the 29th of October, and of course that's the Dalton Sprint Car Summer Slam, so all those guys we've been talking about tonight are likely to be there, and the K&T Drainage King of the Clay. Of course, that last thing we're looking forwards to is the last man standing. With a bit of luck, we'll have the midgets taking on that novelty race, and a dash for cash, $1,000 up for grabs. And with a bit of luck, Glenn Jury can get that one. He's my favourite driver. Until then, tune into Methanol Madness next Thursday at 7:30. That'll be its regular slot. And until then, keep your foot up it.